did you initially get into leadership, and can you briefly describe the path you took to get where you are today?
Well, leadership started before I pastored. I worked at a grocery store, and I wanted to go into business management. So I went to school and went 2 years to get a business degree, and through that, I began to see the impact of leadership. Because I believe that leadership is influence, not necessarily position. And so from that, God called me into ministry and began to pastor, and I began to see that leadership sphere begin to increase and how you can duplicate yourself. And I'm really big into believing in delegation of that type thing. And so I've seen that through leadership, you can implement people into people that you believe in, different qualities, and you can see yourself be multiplied. And that's basically my story, how I got into leadership.
Okay. How important are mentors, and how did you find yours?
I had some built-in mentors. My dad's a pastor, and Dad was my biggest mentor growing up, of course. And then since then, it's through just through life, through ministry. One of my, y'all know, one of mine's that we mentor each other is Bill Harness.
Okay.
Bill and I are great friends, and we try to help each other through different problems. And I believe mentorship is invaluable. You've got to have that. I've got a couple older guys. One of them was a pastor here for a long time, Vernon Abels. Vernon was a mentor of mine for when I was a young man, especially. I'd have different situations I didn't really feel like I could talk to my dad about, and I would talk to him. And I was able to explain some things to him that where I thought I was right, and he was able to show me that I wasn't thinking exactly the way I should. And so I think mentorship helps direct you and guide you, and especially in the area of correcting you when you need to be corrected.
Okay.
You give a mentor permission to do that.
Okay.
So
you didn't go after mentors. They just kind of came into your life.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And since then I've got several younger people that I'm mentoring, and I find myself kind of going after them because I really wish I had probably pursued mentorship more than what I did when I was younger. And so I think that's important.
Okay. Can you describe some of your greatest challenges in leadership?
Probably insecurities. What I mean by insecurities is it's very tempting to compare yourself to others, the way people do things. That was probably one of my biggest challenges. Is because God has called you and equipped you to be who you are. And when I first got started, I just thought I had to be another Jimmy Swaggart. See, I tried to preach like him and tried to act like him, and then I felt God speak to me and say, I didn't call you to be anybody but you. And so I think insecurity was probably one of my greatest challenges. And then in leadership, the leadership as far as I believe you need to train constantly and educate yourself. And so then time constraints as a pastor, personal education, that type thing became something that I really had to battle.
Okay. Yeah. How do you develop good leaders?
Very intentional. And what I mean by that is we have a team meeting every month, and we were doing it every month. We're moving it to every quarter now. But what we do is all of our leadership in our church, we have them come together on a Sunday night. I have somebody preach for me in the sanctuary. Then I take our core leaders into the youth room and I teach leadership principles.
Wow.
That has been a great, it's impacted our church, not just here, but other churches we've pastored. Then I do weekly meetings with my staff. I always have a leadership lesson. I just recently went through being a people person, John Maxwell, with our staff. And then I also train our leaders in deacon. And I never have a deacons meeting where I do not have a leadership lesson.
Okay.
I think it's important anytime we get together with leaders to pour into them. And what I do is basically, if something is ministered to me as a leader and really helped me, then I want to share what I have learned from that with my leaders, those it's helping me. So, and it goes back to what we said earlier, duplicating some things that you'd like to see in those leaders.
Okay. Have you ever had I think you just covered this a little bit, but if you want to expound on it, have you ever had a fear of failure or inadequacy, and how did you handle that?
Absolutely. It seems like as a pastor sometimes, when things are going fantastic and wonderful and great, it's easy to get up on Monday morning and go to the office and enjoy what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like when things are going well, it's always because of so many other things. It's not necessarily not necessarily the pastor, it's just the good things
Mm-hmm.
in the church. But it's amazing how when things aren't going well, it seems like it's always the pastor's fault. At least
Mm-hmm.
that's what you hear. And so I had some Monday mornings where I was just ready to get out of the ministry, and because I felt inadequate,
Mm-hmm.
I took things personal. I can have 150 people tell me, "Well, that message ministered to me," but one person, just a slight negative, maybe it wasn't exactly like I thought they should respond, and I spend all afternoon, or I'm tempted
Mm-hmm.
to spend all afternoon dwelling on that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what I've had to learn to do is to realize not to get too high and not to get too low. It's what I call pastoral bipolar, because you can get very high
Mm-hmm.
when things are going well, and you can get very low when things are going bad. And I've learned, and I've asked God to help me just remain steady and
Oh.
constant, and realize that it's not that a lot of times we try to put a period where God has put a semicolon.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not over yet. You know what I'm saying? We're just in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And building a church and building people is a process.
Okay.
It's not going to be determined by one weekend
Mm-hmm.
of what happens or what happens, whether it's in my leadership, in meetings, or pastoring and
Mm-hmm.
preaching. I've learned to just trust God, do the best I can,
Mm-hmm.
be all that I can be, try to improve myself, and then leave the results with God.
Okay. Okay. How has leadership been rewarding?
Leadership is probably the most rewarding, one of the most rewarding things I do in pastoring. It's being able to see the change in people's lives, having people come up and say things like, "Pastor, that message or that leadership lesson or your life or your staff or your
Mm-hmm.
church has impacted you," is really what I feel like I was created for. That gives me the most satisfaction to have people say that something that we as a team have done
Mm-hmm.
or are doing has impacted their life is just the greatest satisfaction to
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any advice for leading volunteers?
A couple things. Number one is to remember that they're just that. They're volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of high expectations for my staff, and I do for volunteers also. But I think sometimes we can get in the rut of thinking that our volunteers are like our staff, that they're being paid. They don't have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a fine line to balance between the high expectations,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time the appreciation that you have with them being here. And so to me, it's leading with understanding of how busy life is
Mm-hmm.
and how busy, especially when you have kids and then you work and then you come to church
Right.
and then you've got responsibilities at church. So I try my best to understand that even though this is my life
Mm-hmm.
as a pastor, it's not the life of our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
They've got other parts of their life. It is an important part, and I want to try to do the best I can to respect their time
Mm-hmm.
and let the expectations to be fair on everything that I expect. But at the same time, I think communication is very important also, to communicate the expectations that you have.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you hope will be your legacy?
I've said this for many years that the people I pastor, I love the people I pastor. At every church I've been at, I feel like it's the best church that there is in the land. But when it's all been said and done, I want my legacy to be a man that loved God first of all, and loved his family. I want my kids to know and my wife to know that in spite of all the churches we pastored, the ministry we did, that I had my priorities straight. That God was first, my family was second, then ministry was third. And with the people that I led, that I want them to know that I believe that I'm real, the real deal, authentic, and a man of integrity. Not just about from behind the pulpit, but how I lived out away from the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want my legacy to be.